Welcome to today's recap. I'm going to break down my trades from this morning and go over the condition of the overall market right now, especially as it pertains to active traders. I'm back in my office after a week of travel, and it is nice to be back with these big monitors. I can see everything so much better. So we're going to go ahead and start breaking it down by first looking at the S&P 500. Let's start high level, and then we'll begin working our way into the actual trades that I took this morning. So S&P 500 on the intraday, you can see, is up nicely. This is the 5-minute chart. So we're on kind of a steady grind upward that really began with a gap up at 4 a.m. So overall market gapping up and then just riding higher. And if we look at the S&P 500 on the daily chart, you can see that we are a little bit below our all-time highs, but not by much. We're still we're in a really nice trend, more or less. We could probably draw a channel in this area. Let's see, maybe I'll connect the low from there. Let's see, so when I draw it like that, that connects fairly closely. Now, different people will draw these trend lines slightly differently, and so I try to always start with what I think are the most obvious levels, and then if it touches in multiple places, then that for me confirms that it's probably being well respected and other people probably drew a similar trend line. So for right now, it appears that we are in a little bit of an upwards channel. Now, actually, let me pull this back up for 1 second. I'll try to do a channel on the top. So we'll connect the top of this trend line, or that candle there, with about there. So you can see this is sort of our upper trend. If we back this up a little bit, you can see it's a little bit above this level back here from July of 2023. But, someone else might have drawn this trend line a little bit lower, sort of like that, or maybe they, connected it just slightly differently. So depending on how you draw it, it can change. But in any case, we're sort of in the middle right now of a channel. We're on the lower half of it, but we've been holding support, and the upper area is where we kind of come into resistance. So we sort of see the market comes up to these resistance levels, and then all of a sudden there's something that spooks the market. We have sort of a stronger drop back down to the support channel, and then that slow rally back up. So that's kind of how we've been trading now for quite some time, really, with a couple of exceptions where we broke down sort of below the channel, tested the 200 moving average, and then rallied back up. So that's the S&P 500, which I look at just for checking overall market sentiment. We could look at the IWM, which is the Russell 2000 index. This is an index of just small cap companies. And, it wouldn't really reflect how good last year was for small cap traders, which is one of the reasons I don't spend a lot of time looking at the IWM. Yes, you could see it was up in 2024. 2023 was more or less sideways. 2022 was down. 2022 was a better year for me than 2023. You wouldn't guess that based on this being 2022 and that being 2023. And in fact, 2021 was a great year. 2020, of course, was an incredible year, which makes sense because you can see that big move. But the IWM is not a kind of one-for-one. It doesn't have that relationship of if it's going up, I'm going to have big trades for small caps. It just isn't quite that correlated, but there is, I suppose, some relationship there. So overall condition of the market coming into the beginning of the week is that we've got a strong market. Now, last week, we had CRNC, which gave us a big move. CRNC is a US company, and this one, I took my first trade on it at about $8.60, way down here. This thing ended up going all the way up to over, this morning, $27 a share. So that's a huge move. This is really impressive. What was the catalyst that got this one going? It was news of an NVIDIA collaboration. Now, the problem with some of these headlines is that sometimes they do this kind of technique of keyword stuffing, where a company will put a lot of very specific keywords into their press release in hopes of market participants picking up on it and maybe even trading algorithms picking up on it. But in reality, the news is not as good as maybe it reads on sort of first glance. So here with CRNC, the headline from Friday was, 8 a.m., expands collaboration with NVIDIA to advance its COM family of language models. Wow. Okay, so This was the headline that came out on Friday morning that sent the stock up, but I was a little hesitant about it on Friday because the float is 42 million shares and the stock was easy to borrow. So easy to borrow and with a higher float, not typically my wheelhouse. Not usually. That's not something I would even consider trading. But because of the headline on with Nvidia, I gave it a chance and ended up doing really well. So guess what happened this morning? This morning we had a stock, ARBE. This stock at about, what time was it? We'll pull this up. It looks like it was at 8 a.m. Comes out with news, and let's check the headline on it. ARBE. So news headline, collaborates with Nvidia. So as soon as I saw that headline, I was like, okay, I should probably be taking this stock pretty seriously given the move on Friday on CRNC. And so the only problem was, initially the stock pops up. I checked the float and it's a 27 million share float. It's also easy to borrow. So I'm like, I don't love it, but clearly this thing is moving. So I ended up breaking the ice on ARBE at $3.75. That's where I took my entry. Now, what's kind of interesting is that this stock has already been kind of rallying up. It was already moving on Friday, and then it popped up again at 4 a.m. And then all of a sudden this news came out. So it almost feels like maybe somebody knew the news, because I don't know why it was going up if not for that. But in any case, so it pops up and I broke the ice on this stock. So let me show you on the 10-second chart where I got in. Now, usually there was a question today about how I'm using multi-time frame alignment with 1 minute and 5 minute charts and everything else. So when I first see a stock popping up, I am focusing on the 1 minute time frame and on the level 2. Now, because the level 2 moves so quickly, sometimes things happen inside a 1 minute candle and you're not even able to see it on the 1 minute candle because it happens so fast. And that's where the 10-second chart comes in. So I actually jumped into it basically in the middle of this candle here at 375 starter, stop at 350, 25 cents stop. And I just said, you know what? It's got an Nvidia catalyst. I should probably jump in and see where this goes. So it ends up popping up to 410, pulls back, comes back up again, boom, breakthrough 410. That's a micro pullback. We get to move up to 420. Pulls back just for a moment, goes up to 460, pulls back here, squeezes up to a high of 5. And then right up here, we have a little bit of a wall that forms. It taps 5 and rejects. So this ended up pulling back a bit. It comes back up to 5 again and fails to break here, here, and here. And I said, you know what? I can't trust it. And so although it did break 5, I decided not to trade it on that second attempt. So really, my only trades on it were at the very beginning of the move, which was on the 1 minute chart. So at that point, all we had for a 5 minute candle was a huge green candle like this. And I was just trading on the 1 minute and watching the level 2 for these little micro pullbacks. So this is kind of what I was looking at the very beginning of this move. But I was asking myself, I was trying to read the headline because I was like, well, how similar is this headline to what we had on Friday with CRNC? And I'm looking at it and it says, okay, the heart of their AI powered processing, So I'm like, where's NVIDIA? Where's NVIDIA? So I scroll down, collaboration with NVIDIA for advanced computing. And, so ARBE, high resolution, radar integrates with NVIDIA Drive AGX. So I'm like, well, I've got an NVIDIA graphics card right on my computer. Am I collaborating with NVIDIA every time I take a day trade? So I'm like, wait, do they have a partnership? Is this an actual relationship they have with this company? And I'm having kind of a hard time figuring it out from the headline. And so that made me a little unsure. Now, I saw the company's based in Tel Aviv, Israel. So I pulled up the company. I'm looking at their filings and I went back. Let's see. So if you go to this company's the financial year 2023, which was, is now fairly old, but this is their last, looks like proper annual filing here. I scrolled down, there's, all this writing and stuff. And so I'm looking to see if they're operating at a profit or loss. and I see that their revenues for 2023 were like 1.5 million. Cost of revenue is 1.5 million, but then research and development was 34 million. Sales and marketing, 5 million. General administrative, 7 million. They lost $43 million last year. $43 million. Holy smokes. So I looked at their balance sheet, and as of last year, the end of last year, they did have a decent amount of cash on their balance sheet. I think it was like $27 million. So I was like, all right, well, they do have cash, but I began to wonder, is this a company that's going to be at risk, 28 million, of doing a secondary offering? Do we have to worry about them selling shares on the open market with this news catalyst? Now, I pulled up this 6K here, announces Q3 2024 financials. This was in November. And I just wanted to check to see, is their profitability changing? Well, they've got now $18 million of cash, so they've spent some cash. And let's see, you can see they're still operating at a loss. So quarterly, $12 million. So it's a lot of money they're spending. So all of that made me a little weary about buying more into it. And so I got the one trade kind of right on the news. And then as the dust settled, I just sort of was like, I don't know if this one's going to work. Granted, CRNC did work well, and I underestimated that one. But I just wasn't confident. So as it turns out, that was the right move to step back. And so I got some trades on it. By the way, here's my P&L for the day. Up $12,802.57, traded 3 stocks green on all 3. So ARBE made $4,200 on it. All right, so green is good. It's nothing crazy, but breaks the ice. Now, my first trade of the day actually goes back to 7 a.m. So when I first sat down at 7 a.m., we had a little bit of a challenge, which was that I didn't see anything that I really liked. And then GDTC hit the scan. And all of a sudden, in less than 5 minutes, it goes from $3.40 to $8. Just straight up. Now, unfortunately, what goes up in this case comes back down. It did not hold those levels. So when it first popped up on my scanner, I looked at it and I saw, okay, Singapore company, they did have a news headline. And I thought, all right, well, let me watch this for a potential entry. So again, at the very beginning of the move, not really looking at the 5-minute chart. The daily, I checked it and I saw, recent blue sky all-time highs is up here at 950. Not that far away. It's a somewhat recent publicly traded company. So that gave me a little bit more interest in it. And basically, you could see it popped up very quickly. So I took my first trade on this at $6.13. And that was, we popped up, we pulled back, and then we got a dip right here for the next leg higher. So this was that dip right there. And that was enough from about $6 up to $6.50, $6.75, $7 up to $7.50, and then tapping here $8 for me to lock up about $5,300 of profit. I did not feel comfortable going huge on it. I was at the very beginning of the move, and it was on lighter volume, and we had slightly bigger spreads. So because of that, I had to be more conservative, but decent pullback. Can't complain about that. And a nice move higher. A little bit of a rejection up here, tapped 8 and then sold off, consolidating in this area. And I was watching it for a pop back over 750, but it just didn't happen. It started to pull back. So as that started to pull back, RHE came up on the scans, and out of nowhere, I mean, this is unbelievable. This thing went from $1.50 to $7. Just boom, in 2 minutes. It's all of a sudden the leading gainer on the day. It's up 250%, 300%, whatever it was. So it pulls back down here. And on this one, I did dip trades. So I bought dips, sold pops, bought dips, sold pops. And I was hoping that we would get back to this high right here of 7. Now, as you can see here, we did rally back up, but we weren't on this attempt able to squeeze through the new high. And then coming into the open, sort of move this forward, it gives another attempt, but it ends up being almost a perfect double top against this pre-market high. And so I ended up trading it in this area here, buying the dips, and I did not trade it right here, and I did not trade it right here. The reason I didn't trade it right here was because it broke through VWAP, and then this green candle, see that big topping tail? That made me feel like sellers were too heavy, so I didn't like it. Goes back below VWAP, and then at the open, it's below VWAP, so I don't think it's very strong. And then it breaks it, pulls back for a second, and I was like, I just can't trust it. And the halt levels were really close. So it sort of was chasing halt levels and just pushing a little higher, and then finally dropped and pulled back. So my profits this morning were, I was here trading, through the morning, but my profits were all during pre-market. Once the bell rang, I was just like, okay, well, I'm coming to the end of the window where I make the most, which is between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I don't have anything I'm really dialed in on. And then what kind of is a little annoying is that Fubo ends up being one of the biggest movers of the day, and it's got 300 million share float. So, the news came out with Disney, and I thought, yes, that's a great catalyst, but it's a 300 million share float. Is it going to work? And so I decided not to trade it, and it ends up being one of the biggest moves of the day. And now BOXL, this one's up quite a bit as well, from 60 cents up to $1.61. Just crazy halts, really tight ranges because of the halt thresholds being so close on that. So nothing on that one for me. POAI, this one cheaper, made a nice move, but nothing for me on that. SPRC, also a cheaper one. But sticking right now within my price range, what I'm thinking about is it's the beginning of the year, and I've got to stay super disciplined right now about just building my cushion. Slow and steady, don't overstay your welcome. So got green today, $12,802.57, and I'm taking it off the table. That's it. I'll do the exact same thing again tomorrow. So I'm going to tune in tomorrow around 7 a.m. That's when my live broadcast will begin. So members at Warrior Trading and those of you guys who've been thinking about becoming members, today's final call for our New Year's sale. So if you have not already joined, check out the final call for the New Year's sale. That's going to be today, ending tonight. And then tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., I'll be running my broadcast as always. And, hopefully we'll have a little bit of a better scan. One of the things that I sort of feel like is I can only make as much as the market's willing to give me. When the market gives great opportunities, boom, I can have $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 green days. But when the market is a little slower and kind of cools down, or we're just seeing momentum on stocks that are outside kind of the type of stocks I make the most money on, there's nothing I can do. There are some things I can do. I can choose to force it and trade anything that's moving, which will most likely result in losses, or I can be patient. And so I'm going to choose to be patient. But I can't, just make more profit if there's not A quality opportunities for my strategy. So I've got to be willing to put the pedal to the metal and try to squeeze as much as I can out of a hot market, but also just as quickly take my foot off the gas and slow down and be patient while it's cool. All right, so that's my recap here for today. That's the condition of the market, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning and hopefully seeing some good stocks on the scanner. All right, so thank you guys for tuning in. And reminder, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk and practice in a simulator before you put real money on the line.